Good morning, interns. It is just after 9 o'clock, and we are going to start with today's session. We were just waiting for everyone to join on this Saturday morning. So very, very warm welcome to the interns, the tutors, the pharmacists that may be attending, and we thank you for joining us this morning as we are going to be taking you through the pre-registration examination that will be held later on this year. Okay, so to begin with, the welcome address, Ms. Mokoena will address us at the end of today's session. We are going to start with just a quick overview of the pre-registration examination, and then we are joined this morning by Ms. Khan, who's going to be taking us through the calculation questions. We're going to go through a few examples. We will then take a short break. And when we come back from the break, we're then going to go to the general section of the examination, and then lastly, we're going to discuss the remote examination and the administration of the examination. We will provide you with an opportunity to ask questions. After the calculation sections, we will have an opportunity to ask content-related questions relating to the calculation questions. Then after the general sections, again, we will open up for the questions relating to the content of that. And then lastly, we will take questions relating to the administration of the exam. We would like to say that today we're not going to be discussing the CPDs. So please would you hold your questions until you have the CPD session on the 7th and 8th of June, where you will be provided the opportunity to ask all of your CPD related questions. But today we really wanted to focus on the pre-registration examination. The way that you can communicate with us during this workshop is by typing your question in the Q&A, and then we will then answer your questions at those specific time points. So if you have any question, please type it at any stage, and then we will answer them as we proceed with the workshop this morning. So I would like to welcome this morning Mrs. Razia Khan. She is a moderator for the pre-registration examination. And we are also joined by Ms. Anna-Marie Augustine, who is an examiner in the pre-registration examination. So we are very fortunate this morning to have these two experts with us, and they will be able to assist us with preparing and guide us in terms of what content is going to be examined within this examination, what references to use, etc. So we're very, very fortunate, and I'd like to thank them for joining us this morning. From the Office of the Registrar, we are joined by Ms. Malaku, who is the Senior Manager in the Pre-Registration Unit, and myself, Deanne Johnston, and I'm a Manager within the Pre-Registration Unit. And our primary function really is pre-registration examinations, and my specific focus is that of the interns. So we are here to guide you, and we're here to prepare you so that you have the best opportunity to be successful in the upcoming exams. Okay, so let's start with having a look at the pre-registration examination. The pre-registration examination, all of this information is available in the intern manual, but just to recap quickly in case you might not have seen it, the pre-registration examination is one exam that is split over 2 days. You need to write both sections of the examination in the same sitting, and you need to pass both sections of the examination. So on day 1 of the exam, you will then have 40 calculation multiple choice questions. This will then be 2 hours, and within this section of the examination, you need to obtain a sub-minimum of 60%. So out of the 40 calculations, that means that you need to get 24 calculations correct. So after that section of the examination, we will then commence on day 2 of the examination, and there you will have 80 multiple choice questions relating to general practice. This is 2.5 hours, and the sub-minimum for this section of the examination is 50%. So 50% of 80 gives us 40 multiple choice questions. So you need to get a minimum of 40 questions correct. We're going to discuss it later, but there is a compulsory practice examination for those that are going to be writing the pre-registration examination. And this helps you to prepare for the exam and also to see what is required. Okay, so in terms of the examination questions cut across all sectors. So we've got those from the community, institutional, and manufacturing sectors. We also have our examiners and moderators that have experience from these various sectors. So all interns need to complete all questions. So sometimes when you are going through past papers or if you speak to your tutors, they wrote a different format of the examination. This examination requires that all interns complete all questions within the examination from all three sectors. During this time, we are going to then refer to the domains and competency standards, which you are very familiar with as majority of you have now started to submit your CPD entries. And these are the domains and competency standards which are applicable to pharmacists. So open up that document if you have it on hand, and you can refer to that. You can also refer to the intern tutor manual, which will be providing more information. So at this point, I'd like to hand over to Mrs. Khan, who's going to take us through what we are to expect in the upcoming exam. Mrs. Khan?
Thank you so much. So good morning to all the interns. I trust that all is going well with your internships and that you're enjoying the experience. So as Dr. Johnston said, I'm going to go over the calculations sections and basically just go through some of the examples with you. So in terms of what the examination is based on, so you know the various domains and the various competency standards, those are all tested in the exams. And so we look at the domains of public health, safe and rational use of medicines. And when it comes to the calculation sections, especially those ones, the public health sections, the safe and rational use of medicines, supply of medicines and medical devices, and then looking at organization and management skills, and then the other two domains then tested as well in the general section. So if we can have the next slide, please. So yeah, when we look at how the calculation sections are set up, so domain 1, 9% of questions come from domain 1, which is the public health section, and then domain 2, 28% of questions come from the domain 2, which is the safe and rational use of medicines, and then domain 3, and the majority of questions, 58% of questions on the supply of medicines and medical devices, and then the last one, the 5%, comes from the organization and management skills. The next slide, please. So then if we look at the breakdown of those domains and the competency standards that's applicable to those domains, the calculation questions then come from these various sections. So when we look at public health and we look at health economics, some of the questions could be related to cost-benefit analyses, cost-effectiveness analyses, cost minimization, and then looking at cost differential between therapeutic agents. So that's where you make decisions based on what a medicine would cost compared to perhaps a standard medicine or the available medicine. And then looking at cost differential between branded drugs and generic equivalents, cost differentials between dosage forms and routes of administration. So basically that pertains to which route of administration might be cheaper based on and for example, comparing an oral formulation to an injectable formulation. And then looking at cost differential of dosing regimens, which dosing regimen is more cost effective and what's the difference between various dosing regimens. And then a cost differential of alternative treatment plans. So you can see a lot of these questions, the health economic questions, obviously have got to do with cost with benefit, effectiveness, and drug selection. Then when we come to competency standard 2.3, where we're looking at patient medicine review and management. So looking at then looking then at the basically looking then at that competency standard, and we look at the various questions that can be asked. So it goes around dose adjustment, pharmacokinetics, creatinine clearance. The safety of the devices would go around calculating doses, preparing concentrate or diluted compounds, medications accurately, and then various other calculations based on osmolarity, isotonicity, and reconstitution. Then we look at therapeutic outcome monitoring, adjustment of dosages, pharmacokinetics, and creatinine clearance, and pharmacist-initiated therapy. And this is basically where the pharmacist would recommend or initiate a specific therapy, and there we could ask on suitability of the dosing, on calculations of the dosing based on the surface area, on looking at how to reconstitute powders. These are just some of the examples. Calculations of BMI, calculations of peak flow readings. Okay, next slide, please. Then we carry on with looking at medicine production according to the GXP, and there we would look at things like sodium chloride equivalents, freezing point depressions, and you'll see later on we have some examples on those. Solubility, looking at various calculations that pertain to the production of medicines, okay? So, for example, in the process of making a medicine, what calculations do you need to know? That would include things like concentrations and dilutions, density calculations, for example. Then with competency standard 3.2, looking at supply chain management, there we want to know exactly what that says, the supply of the medicines and the various processes involved. So the procurement of the medicines, the percentage markups, for example, looking at lead time, looking at how you would calculate a batch supply analysis. And in terms of formulary development also, again, so how do you in formulary development, what calculations are important? We're calculating cost, we're looking at cost benefit when we're deciding to put a medicine on a formulary, and obviously the ABC analysis, which then would tell us how the medicines are used and how much you're spending on what category or class of medicine. Then when it comes to medicine dispensing, we look at verification of prescriptions, the calculations around suitability of dosing, around the dosage of medicines that are being dispensed, around intravenous injection doses, and also rates of infusion, among other. In terms of compounding, again, how do you work with the master formula, and how do you make calculations based on that? So you could be given a master formula and asked to calculate perhaps one of the ingredients in the master formula, looking at varying concentrations. So you have one concentration and you need to make another from it, solubility, reconstitution, and dilutions. And then in terms of financial management, looking at percentage markup and dispensing fee, as well as budgeting. Next slide, please. So these are the recommended textbooks, and it's pharmaceutical calculations by Ansel, and then the calculations for pharmaceutical practice, Winfield, and the pharmaceutical practice, also Winfield, Rees, and Smith. These are textbooks that you can, you should actually go through these, looking at how to do the calculations, looking at the formulas, etc. before the exam. Remember, in the exam, it's very difficult to refer to textbooks, so the knowledge should be on hand. So just be mindful of your time, try to stay as prepared as possible, do as many calculations as you can before the time, so that when you present it with one in the exam, it's familiar, or the concept is familiar. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, and so I gave you one tip actually before the time, but that's exactly it. It's become very coherent, have a coherent understanding of the principles. Okay, so don't memorize calculations. Don't try to see what you'll fit in where. Understand why the calculation is how it is, and be very careful with the units, right? Know what the SI units are. So, for example, if we tell you percentage weight in volume, by now as pharmacist interns, you know that the weight is in grams and the volume is in 100 moles when you have a percentage weight in volume calculation. So remember that when you're doing your calculations. Also, in your equations, identify the equations that you've been used while you've been practicing. For example, your concentration C1V1 is equal to C2V2. Those are calculations that you are quite used to working with. And just remember that while you are practicing, in fact, in your internship, while you're in the manufacturing or while you're in the various divisions in the pharmacy, try to become okay with the calculations that are being used and how they're implemented. Because remember, it's very practical. Calculations is about how we actually practice. So the more you do it, the easier it gets. And then in terms of the equipment, you need to have a scientific calculator with you. So use the same calculator that you used to practice with as you will in the exam. So start using that calculator. Don't suddenly bring one that you're not familiar with to the exam. Check the batteries. Make sure that you're not going to have any problems while you're writing in terms of your battery dying. And then know the settings well of your calculator. So just keep practicing using the calculator that you're going to be using in the exam, and then a paper and pens for you to do side calculations. I think, yeah, the next slide, please. So in terms of conversions, okay, so these have been drummed into us, I think, since school, since maths, in converting between units. So remember the principles of conversion and remember how these can be expressed. So for example, 10 parts per million can be expressed as 0.001%. Okay, and when we're looking at how we go from a smaller denomination to a larger denomination. So for example, if you're going from micrograms to milligrams. So obviously, you know, even if you're going from milligrams to grams, you know that 10 milligrams is really very little of a gram. So if you're going from a milligram to a gram, you're going to divide by 1,000. And so each step along the units as you go from micrograms to milligrams, from milligrams to grams, grams to kilograms, you're actually going to divide by 1,000. So if I give you a calculation and I tell you it's 100 grams and you need to provide the answer in kilograms, you divide by 1,000 and then you would get 0.001. So it's just what you've always learned in terms of conversions. For example, also similarly, then going backwards from kilograms to grams, you know that there are many more grams in a kilogram. So 1 kilogram has 1,000 grams. So going from kilograms to grams, you're going to be multiplying by 1,000. Okay, next slide, please. And then similarly for other conversions, like for milliliters and liters, it follows the same principle. So I think by now most interns are quite familiar with conversion, but please practice them. And more important than practicing them is to take note of what the question asks for. Take note of what the denomination is wanted in the answer. And then if you need to make conversion, then do so. So just that's important, because I think everybody does practice these. You do know how to convert. What you need to do is make sure that you get it right in terms of what the question requires. Okay, next slide, please. So in terms of some helpful tips for the exam technique, firstly, select the correct formula. So make sure you read the question properly. I always say start at the very beginning, read the question properly, select the correct formula, and then when you are calculating and transcribing, make sure that the values that you're using are the ones that are actually in the question. So double check against the question. Make sure that you've used the correct figures in your formula, the correct numbers, that you've basically selected the correct formula, and now you've selected also the correct figures from the question and put that into your formula. And then, if possible, try to estimate a range for your answer. So, for example, if you're working out a BSA calculation and you get an answer of 20 and you already know, well, that can't be correct. Or if you get a BMI calculation that's totally out of the range, then you know your answer is not correct. So you go back and check. So always double check your calculation. Try to estimate. So if it's something simple where you can calculate it quickly, like 100 times 2 is 200 and you get an answer of 2,000, don't always rely on your calculator. Sometimes think it out first, estimate where your answer is going to be, and then start calculating. Okay, and always double check your calculation. Okay, the next slide, please. In terms of time management, so in terms of you maximizing your time, so you know you've got 120 minutes, you have 40 multiple choice questions, so it's approximately 3 minutes per question. So try to have that at the back of your mind when you're doing these calculations, okay? There's no negative marking. and don't leave anything blank, because a blank answer basically means you got it wrong. If you attempt an answer, you have that option of perhaps getting it right. So always answer all the questions. Okay, next slide, please. So let's look at some examples. And like we said, the first step is start at the very beginning. So you have, in this example, a 55-year-old male patient, and he's stabilized on warfarin 5 milligrams daily at a cost of 28 Rand 80 per month. So what do you know already? That the question has to do with warfarin, and it has to do with the cost of 28 Rand 80 per month. And the patient has his INR monitored weekly at a cost of 117 Rand 70 per test. So already you've got things. You've got a monthly cost and you've got a weekly cost. That's the other thing that you should note. The patient has heard about rivaroxaban from his doctor and wants to know the cost implications. The cost of rivaroxaban 15 milligrams daily is 637 Rand and 95 per month. So the cost of this medication is 637 Rand and 95 cents per month. What is the difference in cost between these two options? Okay, so next slide, please. So when we're weighing what the options are, we're going to look at warfarin, what it costed the facility to provide warfarin to the patient for a month. And it included the cost of the warfarin per month, which was at 5 milligrams a day, 28 Rand 80. And then each week the patient needed to do an INR test. So for the whole month, it would be 117 Rand 70 times 4 tests, which is 470 Rand and 80 cents. So in total for that month, the patient would then have the regimen would cost 28 Rand 80 plus 470 Rand 80, which comes to 499 Rand 60. So giving warfarin for a month, including the test and everything else that was necessary, came to 499 Rand 60. And the rivaroxaban cost as a pure cost was 637 Rand 95 per month. So already you know that rivaroxaban costs more, and that the cost difference is 637.95 minus 499.60, and it comes to 138 Rand and 35 cents. So the rivaroxaban treatment costs 138 Rand and 35 cents more per month. Okay. And you would see that these kind of calculations you do quite often, where they would say, oh, but you don't need to do any INR testing if you use rivaroxaban, but when you go back and you do the actual calculation, then it still works out cheaper to use warfarin. So those are some of the cost implications of decision making. Okay, so the next slide, please. So in this example, you're looking at a patient who requires an intravenous infusion of a normal saline solution, and in your hospital, so that's 0.9% weight in volume sodium chloride, and in your hospital pharmacy department, you have water for injection BP, and you have 4.5% weight in volume sodium chloride solution BP. So assuming that there's no volume displacement effects, what volume of this injection, that's the 4.5% weight in volume sodium chloride solution, needs to be added aseptically to an expandable PVC infusion bag containing 100 ml of water for injection BP to produce the required sodium chloride concentration. So I don't know if people still do this, but it also sometimes helps to just draw a little picture. Okay, so in your little picture, you would have a bag of sodium chloride, 0.9%, and you would have an injection with 4.5% sodium chloride injection that you need to add then to the bag. And you would then know exactly what goes where and what you're trying to do, and then you would do the calculation. So next slide, please. So when you look at the solution, so what you actually want at the end is a 0.9% weight in volume sodium chloride solution. Okay, and you put that in the center. What you have is you have 0% of that solution, and you have at the bottom 4.5% of the injection, which is what you're going to use to make the 0.9% sodium chloride bag. So if you take 0 and you subtract 0.9 or 0.9 subtract 0, you get 0.9 parts. And if you take 4.5% and you subtract 0.9, you get 3.6 parts. So the 3.6 parts is equal to the 0%, which is the water for injection that you have, okay, which has no sodium chloride in it. And that water for injection that you had, that bag was 100 mils. So 3.6 parts refers to 100 mils, and therefore 0.9 parts. You do a calculation for that. 0.9 over 3.6 is equal to x over 100. You solve for x, and x is 25 milliliters. So you would then take a volume of 25 milliliters of the 0.45% weight in volume solution, and you would add that to the infusion bag. Okay, so next slide, please. If you want, you can maybe try to also figure and see if you can work out the calculations as we go along. So if you look at example 3, given that the relative molecular mass of sodium chloride is 58.5 grams per mole, what amount of sodium chloride powder is required to prepare 300 milliliters of a solution containing 50 millimoles per liter? So remember, I said as you go through the question, write down what you're actually getting. So you've got already the relative molecular mass of sodium chloride, which is 58.5 grams. Okay, then the question goes on to tell you that you need to prepare 300 moles of a solution that must contain 50 millimoles per liter. So in 1 liter, you require 50 millimoles of sodium chloride, and you need to then decide what amount of powder you need to then prepare, 300 milliliters of that. So it's very important to, again, like I said, take note of the units. It's 50 millimoles per liter and 300 milliliters. Okay, so the next slide, please. So when we're looking at it, from the question, we got that 1 millimole of sodium chloride was equal to 58.5 milligrams. And so we want to find 50 millimoles of sodium chloride, and we get an answer of, we take, so basically if you do your calculations where you say 1 millimole is equal to 58.5, 50 millimoles is equal to X, and you solve for X, you get 2925 milligrams. Okay, so there's 2925 milligrams of sodium chloride in 50 millimoles. So it says that if you carry on with the solution, if you have this amount, which you just calculated, 2925 milligrams of sodium chloride in, remember, 1 liter of solution, then you have a 50 millimoles per liter solution, because what you actually were wanting to find out is how many would you actually need in 300 milliliters, and the 2925, if you put that into 1 liter, then you have 50 millimoles in 1 liter. And therefore, for 300 milliliters, you would then again do that calculation. You'd say 2925 milligrams in 1 liter of solution, therefore X in 300 milliliters of a solution. And when you solve for X, you would get 877.5 milligrams of sodium chloride. So in order to make that 300 ml solution, you would need 877.5 milligrams of sodium chloride. Okay, next slide, please. So this is the next example, and this is an example where we said perhaps sometimes you may get a formula, a master formula, or a prescription with a formula, and a pharmacist then receives the following prescription, and the prescription has ephedrine 0.5 grams, clobutanol 0.25 grams, anhydrous dextrose QS, and purified water made up to 50 ml. So the question asks how many grams of anhydrous dextrose should be used in compounding the prescription to make an isotonic solution. So first you have to take note that this formula that you've been given, or this prescription that you've been given, is for 50 ml. Okay. Then the sodium chloride equivalent that's given for 1% weight in volume solution of ephedrine is 0.3. And for a 1% weight in volume solution of clobutanol is 0.24, and for a 1% solution of anhydrous dextrose is 0.18. So those are the sodium chloride equivalents that you've been given that you must also note. Okay, next slide, please. So when you want to look at the equivalent sodium chloride for the ephedrine hydrochloride and clobutanol, this is how you would do it. You would then go to ephedrine hydrochloride and you would say, look at the prescription that was given. So 0.5 grams of ephedrine hydrochloride is equivalent to 0.3 grams of sodium chloride, and therefore 1 gram would be equivalent to X, and you solve for X and you get 0.15 grams. Similarly, for clobutanol, you use the similar equation. So you would say that 0.25 grams of clobutanol is equivalent to 0.254 grams of sodium chloride, and 1 gram is equivalent to X. You solve for X and you get 0.06 grams of sodium chloride. So solving for X, I think these calculations everybody should be quite okay with, okay? Because we do them over and over again while we are still as undergraduates, and also when you are working as an intern in a manufacturing department, these calculations are done all the time. So you should be okay with solving for X when you have the other variables. So then the total sodium chloride equivalent in the preparation then is 0.21 grams, because you're going to add your 0.15 and 0.06 and get 0.21 grams. And an isotonic solution of sodium chloride contains, we know, 0.9 grams of sodium chloride in 100 moles of solution. Okay, we know 0.9% sodium chloride is isotonic, and therefore 0.45 grams per 50 mole, because remember, when you went backwards into calculating, you're looking at the 50 mole. And the quantity of sodium chloride, therefore theoretically needed, is 0.24 grams. So now you calculate the equivalent quantity of anhydrous dextrose by saying that you have 1 gram of anhydrous dextrose being equivalent now to this. You have 0.25 grams of sodium chloride, and you want to find out the amount of anhydrous dextrose that you need for this 50 mole solution. So again, you solve for X and you get 1.33 grams of anhydrous dextrose. Okay, so it's a stepwise approach. First calculating the isotonicity, first calculating the equivalent quantities of sodium chloride for ephedrine and clobutanol, and then calculating how much dextrose needs to be added. Okay, next slide, please. So in this example, calculation example, you're looking at the calculating the quantity of sodium chloride that should be added to 150 moles of a 1% weight in volume solution of apomorphine hydrochloride to render the solution isotonic with blood plasma. Okay, and it tells you that the freezing point depression of a 1% weight in volume solution of the drug and sodium chloride, so of the drug is 0.08 and of sodium chloride is 0.58 degrees Celsius respectively. So what is given? Firstly, what do you need to know? You need to know a quantity in grams of sodium chloride. That's the first thing that you need to note. The second thing is that you're going to be adding it to 150 milliliters of a 1% solution of apomorphine. And you're going to want at the end a solution that's isotonic with blood plasma. Okay, and what is also given is the freezing point depression of the sodium chloride and the solution of the drug. Okay. The next slide, please. So when we're looking at the calculation of the solution, then we use the freezing point, the formula, where you would say that weight is equal to 0.52 minus A over B, and you would get an answer of W of 0.758%. So you take 0.52, you subtract the 0.08, that's the solution, that's the freezing point depression of the drug over the one for normal saline, which is 0.58, and you get your answer of 0.758% mass in volume. So remember that this mass in volume is grams per 100 moles. Okay, so if you have grams per 100 moles, then for a 150 mole solution, you would therefore need a certain amount of sodium chloride. You have 0.758 in 100 moles. How many would you need for 150 moles? And you would do your calculation and you would get 1.137 grams of sodium chloride. Okay, so remember what we said. Remember your SI units, mass in volume is grams per 100 moles, and that you need to convert it to 150 moles. Okay, next slide, please. So in this example, we're looking at the milli equivalents of the potassium ion, and we're saying how many milli equivalents of potassium ion are there in a 250 milligrams pen V potassium PNVK, so penicillin V potassium tablet. And a note is given that the molecular weight of penicillin V is 388.48, and there is 1 potassium ion in the molecule, and the valence of potassium is 1. So those are the important things that you need to know. So again, what are you asked for? You are asked for, the question asks for the number of milli equivalents in 250 milligrams of a PNVK tablet. And what are you given? You're given the molecular weight of penicillin V, and you're also told that there's 1 potassium ion in the molecule and that the valence of that ion is 1. Okay, next slide, please. And then you see how that becomes important, just taking note of all the things that you've been given. So you're looking at the number of milli equivalents per millimole, and you're saying the milli equivalents per millimole is equal to the valence times the number. And we said that it had a valency of 1. And so and the number of millimoles is 1, so 1 times 1 is 1. So then we calculate the equivalent weight, and we use the equivalent weight formula. So you'd say the molecular weight in milligrams per millimole over the milli equivalents per millimole. And you've already calculated your milli equivalents per millimole to be 1. And you were given the weight of 388.48 milligrams per millimole. So your equivalent weight then becomes 388.48 milligrams per milli equivalent. Therefore, there's 1 milli equivalent of potassium in 388.48 milligrams of PNV. So for 250 milligrams, similarly, we solve for X. So what do we know? We know that we have 388.48 being equivalent to 1 milli equivalent, and what would 250 milligrams be equivalent to? And when you do your calculation, you solve for X, you get that 250 milligrams is equivalent to 0.644 milli equivalents of potassium. Okay, next slide, please. So that brings us to the end of the calculation section and the types of calculations you could get. So these are just a sample of the types of calculations that you could get in the exams. So I hope that helps you. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Mrs. Khan. So if the interns would like to ask any questions relating to calculation questions, please would you type them in the chat function or the Q&A that you can see on the right-hand side of your screen. If you could type in your questions, we're just going to give a few minutes to see if any questions come through. Okay, so it seems like we don't have any questions relating to the calculation section of the exam, but if you should have any questions later, please would you type them in the chat, and then we can answer them when we come back. So at this point, we're just going to take a short break, and we would like you during this 10-minute break to just log on to this Microsoft form. And this Microsoft form, there are a few questions relating to the general section of the exam, and these will be discussed after we have gone through the general section of the exam, and this will just help us in terms of discussing the types of questions that you might face. Okay, so there have been a few questions. So before we go on our break, let's just answer the questions that we have. The first question is, please can you provide a PowerPoint or PDF of the example calculations? So we will be providing a video or the video of today's section today's presentation. So you will have the opportunity to rewatch this presentation, and then you would be able to then have a look at those questions again. Calculation questions will be multiple choice. Yes, calculation questions will be multiple choice. You will need to select the correct answer from the from options A, B, C, and D. The last question that we have, I just want to ask Ms. Khan, was one relating to the recommended textbooks. Where do we get these recommended textbooks?
So Jen, I'm actually not, I think the interns would have to check with the bookshops, with the academic bookshops if they have the questions, or else you could look at internet sources as well. So those are just recommended textbooks. They're not that you have to buy them. You could also check with other people who've already written the exam, perhaps if they have the textbooks.
Thank you so much. And there is a request to please go through the last example again. So I'm just going to move to that one. The last example that we had was the one on milli equivalents. So maybe we should start with the question. If you could just take us through it again.
Sure, no problem. So in this question, you're looking for milli equivalents of potassium, of the potassium ion, okay, in 250 milligrams of your penicillin V potassium tablet. So we know that that's how we get our PNVK tablet. It comes as a 250 milligram tablet. So what's given here is the molecular weight, which is 388.48. And you're also told that there's 1 potassium ion in the molecule and the valence of potassium is 1. So sometimes you may have a question where you have another substance where the ion might be an ion that has another valency. And that just helps you in the initial part of the question where you need to divide by the valence of the ion. So if we move to the solution, I'll show you that. So if you look into the next slide, so to calculate the number of milli equivalents as follows. So you can see that the millimoles is 1 millimole, and there's how many milli equivalents are there in 1 millimole. So you know that the milli equivalence is 1 and the millimoles is 1. You calculate the milli equivalents, you're looking at the valence and you're looking at the number of ions, okay? And both of them were 1. So when you want to calculate the equivalent weight, you'd say the molecular weight, you take the molecular weight that was given, which was 388.48, and you divide it by the 1 milli equivalent of millimoles. So like I told you earlier, say for example, your valence was 2, then your valence times the number would be 2 times 1, and your answer would be 2, and here you would have to divide by 2. But in this case, it's given that the valence is 1. So so basically you're saying that you're working with 388.48 milligrams is equivalent to a milli equivalent. So you're looking at an equivalent weight of 388.48 milligrams per milli equivalent. So if you were wondering where the valency comes in, it comes in the very first part where you're calculating the valence times the number. And it's just that to remember to divide the molecular weight in the milligrams per millimole molecular weight by that milli equivalents per millimole answer that you get. Okay, so then your equivalent weight, then it becomes then just looking at comparing what you have in 388.48 with what you would have in 250 milligrams. So you would then say that your equivalent weight is 388.48 milligrams per milli equivalent, and therefore there's 1 milli equivalent of potassium in 388.48 milligrams of penicillin V. That's what the equivalent weight means. And therefore, for a weight of 250 milligrams, you would then say I have 1 milligram, 1 milli equivalent of potassium in 388.48 milligrams of penicillin V. And so how many milli equivalents do I have in 250 milligrams of penicillin V? And you do a cross multiplication and you solve for X, and your answer is then 0.644 milli equivalents of potassium. And does that help? Is there a concern around? I think the main part is the initial part where you're actually calculating the valence, looking at the valence and multiplying by the number.
Thank you so much. We have had another question that has come through. Do we get a formula sheet in the exam? So we don't provide a formula sheet, but I'm going to ask Mrs. Khan for some guidance in preparing a formula sheet.
Yeah, so I think if you prepare a formula sheet, you can consider the ones, I would say, break it up into what formulas you're actually looking for. So for example, you have, if you're looking at, for example, this one, a freezing point depression formula, you could have like your easy formulas on one side and your more difficult formulas on the other side. You could also just give them each headings and know your formula sheet. So don't prepare your formula sheet the day before the exam. Prepare your formula sheet way in advance and use your formula sheet when you're doing your solution. So when you're making up your formula sheet, make sure that firstly you've transcribed the formulas correctly, okay? Once you make sure that you've transcribed the corrections formula, when you're doing calculations and examples, use your formula sheet so that you become okay with where you've put it, where you've put the items on your formula sheet. So all of us have written matric exams, and we'll know we're given these formula sheets for physics, for science, and you actually have to become very familiar with them before you write your exam. So I would really recommend that you do the same here. So develop your formula sheet, take out the formulas from the textbooks, know where your formulas are, and when you're practicing, practice using your own formula sheet.
Thank you so much. So that's all the questions that we have for now. So once again, we're just going to take a 10-minute break. It is 9:52 at the moment, so we will come back at 10:02. During this time, please would you answer these questions relating to the general section of the exam. So we will see you again at 10:02. Thank you, everyone. Welcome back, everyone. So as we come back from our break, if you haven't yet had the opportunity to answer the form that we requested regarding the examples of questions from the general practice, please would you take this opportunity just to answer the 6 questions that we have available on that form. And as we come back, we are now going to be going to the general section of the examination. And at this point, I'd like to welcome Miss Augustine, who is joining us, and she is an examiner from the pre-registration examination, and she'll be taking us through this part of the presentation. Thank you so much, Anna-Marie.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Deanne. Okay, so we're going to go through the general section, which is pretty much similar to the calculations section as far as the questions comes from the same competency standards. Okay, so there's a breakdown of where the questions would be coming from. So I think by now you're all very familiar with the domains, because you've done your CPDs or you're busy with your CPDs, and you got to know the competency standards very well. So if we look at that, this is not so much important that you know where it's going to come from, but it just so let's break it down, and then you will see why are there bigger sections for questions and why are there smaller sections. So just to refresh you, so domain 1, 21.25% of the questions comes from there. That's the public health one. In our daily practice, we do that often, so that is quite a big portion of our daily activities. Domain 2, the safe and rational use of medicines and medical devices. Our pharmacist advice therapy fits in here, 26% of the questions. And then domain 3, supply of medicines and medical devices. Dispensing, compounding, manufacturing of medicines would fit in there. And then your domain 4, organization and management skills, which at your level as intern, it's not a domain that you would be practicing often. And then domain 5, an important part of our profession, professional and personal practice. Our ethics fits in there. Actually, ethics fits in everywhere, but that is ethics on its own. And then the last domain, domain 6, would be the education, critical analysis and research that you did in your undergrad years, maybe to a bigger extent than now. Okay, so this is just to keep in the background. I wouldn't say now spend more time on this, that, or the other, but to give you an idea. So your domain 1, 2, and 3, and 5 would make out the majority of the paper. Thank you. Next slide. Okay, now we come to the references that you can use. Same as with the calculations references. These are just recommendations. And I think what is important with the references is that you should plan it now. Part of your preparation for the exam is to plan which references to use, because it can be overwhelming. You can basically use anything. So one tend to think, I don't want to leave out anything, so I take in more, and more is not better here. So the same with the calculations references. There was the question on where can I get the books. Those books are prescribed textbooks at different universities, and it's not that we ask the questions from the books, it is just a guideline. So what you did in pharmaceutics would be a good reference of the different calculations. Same here, the books that you use in the pharmacy while practicing would be the books that you would need for the practice exam or for your exam. So references that could be useful could be your SAMF, the MIMS, MDR, and then your EM guidance or EML, standard treatment guidelines, your GPP, your GMP, and then the compendium, both acts, the Pharmacy Act and the Medicines Act. And then maybe any other acts that you think could be relevant to the practice of pharmacy. Then what is very important is it current? You cannot use, or I wouldn't recommend you to use the 9th edition of the SAMF, because some things could have changed. The same with the EM guidance. It must be current references. Okay, next slide. Thank you. Right. So where can you get this? So this is a screenshot from the SAPC website. So if you go there, you can you open the website, and please note it's before you log in. So you don't log in with your P number and password. It's even before you log in. You go to this. You go to this section there that says Pharmacist Intern. There are blocks coming up, and you click on Pharmacist Intern. And once you've clicked on Pharmacist Intern, you would go to Manual, and there you can see that all of that is displayed there. The GPP, the GMP, the Standard Treatment Guidelines, and the National Drug Policy of South Africa. So they are all there for you to use during the exam. And what is extremely important is don't just go and find them, start using them before the exam. So as a rule of thumb, don't use anything in the exam that you haven't used before the time. And that is why the practice exam is so important, because that's really your practice session where you're going to find out, I've done my practice exam, I've identified this reference to use, I've never used it, so maybe I'm going to put it far away because I didn't use it for the practice exam, so the chances of me needing it is slight. Because the more condensed your references are, the less you can confuse yourself. Thank you. Next slide. There's some further guidance on where you can find references. If you go there also before you log in, and you look at the 5 circles on at the top right-hand corner on the website, the middle one is a little book, and if you click on there, it will take you to legislation and to the Pharmacia. Whatever was published in the Pharmacia is also relevant information that could give you guidance on some decisions that you need to make in a pharmacy. Remember, the Pre-Reg exam is really to ascertain whether you can practice as a pharmacist. Up to last year, when you were busy with your degree, questions were asked to test your knowledge. Now it's more you have the knowledge, and now it is to apply the knowledge. Thank you. Next slide. Okay, so there is, if you click on there, go to regulations, and all of this that we are showing you now, go after the workshop. This is part of your preparation. Go and click on each and every one and see what information is in here. Would it be information that I might need? And also, apart from that, read through everything. Yes, it's an open book exam, but you don't have time to go and reference everything. So some of it you have to study, and some of it you have to, and remember, going forward, you are a pharmacist, you're all pharmacists now, so you can't reference everything. You have to make decisions every day based on the knowledge that you get. So click on all those regulations there and see what is the information in there. Read through it and take note of it. Thank you. Next slide. There's all the rules that is practiced. There you'll see that the third one from the bottom is also the GPP manual. And then the second one from the bottom, also very important, is our code of conduct. So all pharmacists, as well as every person registered on the register of Pharmacy Council, so that includes our pharmacist assistants as well, would have to abide by the code of conduct. So I think it is important that you know your code of conduct for your everyday practice and therefore for the exam as well. Thank you. Next slide. Those are the board notices. At this stage, if you don't know what a board notice is, then I think it's important that you familiarize yourself with what is a board notice and where does it fit in. And though there are some of the board notices that has been published, and on the previous slide, there was also some of the board notices. Thank you. Next slide. Right. So now how to use my reference material. So important, as I've said, make sure that you know your references. The books that you're going to take in, if you've never used a book before, don't even take it in, because you have to know what is the content of the book. And with that, I don't mean you have to know the book inside out, but you have to know, first of all, where is the index? How is the index structured? Is it by medicine classes? Is it alphabetical? What type of information is in this book? What's in the front page? What's in the first few pages before the index? So the same like you made yourself or you are going to make yourself a calculation sheet to take in. I think use those different color tabs and make tabs for in your book to reference and make a note, maybe make a page that you slide into the book to say, this is what I'm going to find in my SAMF, this is what I'm going to find in this book, in my MDR, this is what I'm going to find in the EML, etc., etc. So again, more is not necessarily better. So it's very important that you decide on references and only references that is going to be used. So again, don't use something that you've never used before. And if you use notes from university, make sure that whatever is said in that notes is still current and valid. If we just take the whole past 2 years with COVID, things that were practiced right in the beginning in March or April 2020 are no longer valid. First of all, we didn't wear masks, then we started wearing masks. Now in Europe, they don't wear masks anymore. So make sure that if you use university notes, that whatever is stated in that notes is still current. And then just on the right-hand side, download the references before the exam. Don't try and download something on the day of the exam. And this also applies for the practice exam. See the practice exam as a real exam, so do everything beforehand. From today onwards, your preparation starts. Because you can't waste time on the day of the exam to download references and also the value of the practice exam is going to be less if you do the downloading on that day. Right, thank you. Next slide. Right, other online resources that you can use would be your EM guidance. I think all of you have got the EM guidance or should have it on your phone, downloaded on your phone. The Merck manual you could have, SAPRA, or go to the SAPRA website, see what information is there that could be useful, print it out or download it. If you are going to use apps, have you used it before? Practice to use it. Set some questions for yourself and use it in your everyday practice. When you are faced with a question, see if you can find it in your apps that you are going to use in the exam or in your references. And then can you use a second device for the resources? Yes, you may. All right. Then just some tips on how to do the exam. First of all, read the question carefully. Multiple choice questions have got a nasty thing of all of a sudden A, B, C, and D, all of them look as if they can be correct. So read the question and think of before, if you can help it, not to peep at the 4 options, to think what would be. Some of the questions you would need to read the options before you can make a decision, but some of them there could be an answer already, and then you see if you can find the answer there. Then you would identify the statements of which you are sure. So there are going to be 4 statements. And then you've got to select A, B, C, or D, which one is the correct one, or which one would be your answer. So if you can eliminate some questions, you increase your possibility of getting to the correct answer. And then you would confirm only the statements that you are unsure of. So one of the big pitfalls of an open book exam is because you want to all of a sudden confirm everything. If you know that simvastatin is used for cholesterol, on the day of the exam, simvastatin is still going to be used for cholesterol. So you don't have to confirm it just because you can and because you're allowed to now use a book. If you can't complete a question, carry on with the next question, make a note and say, I need to come back, but it will automatically keep it in the system if you haven't answered a question. Just to help you to answer how to think, look at words, true, is, correct, false, not, incorrect, and then something that could be quite confusing is most appropriate. This is not the type of question that you are used to from your undergraduate years, where you get a statement and then the question is which of the following options would be most appropriate. But this is exactly how it works in our everyday practice. You are faced with a scenario and there are more than one option, but one of them would be the most appropriate action to take. So always think of which one of these. So sometimes you'll get to a question and it might feel like option B and option D is correct, which could be, but then you have to look at which one would be the most appropriate one to do. Next question, slide. And then very important, we talked a lot now about references, which reference to use, and now we come to time management, but even your time management starts by preparing for the exam already, because the better prepared you are, the better you are going to use your time optimally. So by sorting out your references and what's inside the references before the time, you're already managing your time. So just to look at it, you have 2.5 hours, and that is there's 80 questions, 4 options per question. So that means it's 80 statements plus 4 options per statement. And you've got less than 2 minutes per question. It might sound daunting, but that's why the better you're prepared, you are going to do some questions in 30 seconds. By that, putting time in the bank for the more difficult questions and the questions that you do need to reference. Because if you think of and do this as a test at home, or as an experiment, look at something that you have to look up and time yourself. How long does it take me to find something in the SAMF? How long does it take me to find something in the EM guidance? Just to give you an idea on how much time do I need if I really have to reference something. And then important that there's no negative marking. So don't leave anything blank. So if you leave something blank, you haven't entered it at all, so you have a 0 chance of being correct. Whereas if you select an answer, you've got a 25% chance of having it correct. And if you read through the question and you eliminate some that you do know that it's not A or B, but you don't have an idea whether it's C or D, then you already have a 50% chance of getting it correct. Next one. Okay, so now we come to the questions that you have answered. We're going to go through this. The 6 questions here, none of them are in the exam. This is just to give you an idea of what the questions are like. And I think what you can learn from this is if you had something wrong, why did you have it wrong? Did you maybe not use the right reference? Did you maybe read the question wrong? So to learn from this is important to learn where did I go wrong? And if I had selected the correct answer, why did I select the correct answer?
Thank you so much, Anna-Marie. So far we have 153 responses. Can I read the question for you and then you can provide us with some feedback?
Yes.
So a breastfeeding mother inquires whether it is safe to use aspirin. Which of the following reference sources would assist you in determining the safety of this medicine for this patient? A, daily drug use, 145 people chose this as the correct answer. B, good pharmacy practice, we had 1. C, British Pharmacopedia, there were 5. And Pharmacy Act 53 of 1974, there were 2.
Thank you, Jan. Okay, so I think it was clear that the majority of people selected the correct answer, the daily drug use. So again, if you didn't know what's inside the daily drug use, you wouldn't know what to select or when to, if to select the DDU. Or you could use any other drug medicine reference that would address drugs in pregnancy and breastfeeding. So if you, now just a comment on this question, if in the exam you get a similar question and you use book ABC for drugs in pregnancy and that book is not there, then you've got to select the one that is there. So in this case, it was the DDU.
The next question, so question 2, a patient presents a prescription for methotrexate for rheumatoid arthritis. Which of the following counseling points is true? A, the prescribed dose can be divided across a number of days if they experience side effects. 47 interns chose this as the correct option. B, take the medicine on an empty stomach 1 hour before or 2 hours after a meal. There were 38. C, immediately stop taking the medication and contact the doctor if hair loss is experienced. We had 26. And D, contact the doctor if exposed to someone with chicken pox or shingles. 43 chose this as the correct answer.
Thank you. Okay, here we had sort of a very, across all the options, there were some answers. So I think what can we learn from here is that methotrexate, maybe, you know, it's important to study it. Also, what is different today, you didn't have, or I'm not sure whether you used references or if you just took a sort of calculated guess on this one. So again, you can go through this. I can maybe just make a comment on why 2A is not correct. So important here, the question is, which of the following counseling points is true? So this is about counseling. So option A, which is the prescribed dose can be divided across a number of days if they experience side effects. This is not wrong. You can maybe alter the dose, but this would be something to discuss with a doctor. So this is not a counseling point. So this is something important to learn, that read the question carefully and read what is asked. So even if you didn't know anything about methotrexate, you could immediately eliminate option A, because this is not a counseling point. This is actually something where you would discuss it with a doctor. So that would be a referral, or you would phone the doctor and discuss it with him. All right, so next question.
Thank you. So question 3, quality risk management supports a scientific and practical approach to decision making. Which of the following is true regarding quality risk management? Option A, the regulators assess and manage risk using random risk management tools and or procedures. There were 17 that chose this as the correct answer. B, the use of statistical tools to support quality risk management methods should be discouraged. We had 5. Tools for documented, transparent, and reproducible methods to accomplish the quality risk management processes are used, 108. And D, tools in specific areas pertaining to drug substance and drug and in brackets medicinal product quality are used. Here we had 24 responses.
Okay, so I think important here is if you don't know what quality risk management is, then you would be blind in this question and you wouldn't know what to answer. But I think the majority of people selected the correct option, and a few selected the incorrect option, which may be because of an uncertainty of what quality risk management is.
Okay, so question 4. Question 4, you receive a prescription for venlafaxine XL 150 milligram once daily to be repeated monthly for 5 months. The patient requests that you dispense 75 milligram capsules instead of the 150 milligram capsules. Which of the following actions is most appropriate for you to take? Option A, there were 11 that chose this as the correct answer. Dispense 75 milligram capsules as requested by the patient. B, dispense 150 milligram capsules as instructed on the prescription. There were 15 responses. C, consult the doctor before dispensing the medication, 128. And D, advise the patient to take one 150 milligram capsule every second day, and there was 1 person who chose this as the correct answer.
Okay, so I think the majority of people were also correct here. This is maybe, not really, but maybe an example of, would it be incorrect to say A, dispense 75 milligrams as requested by the patient? Yes, it would be, and a lot of people might think, no, what, the patient requested that, and if they want to use a lesser dose, then it's fine. But if you think of it, will now the patient gets back to the doctor in 6 months' time, he's not controlled, and the doctor doesn't understand why, and he upped the dose. So it is important that the doctor actually knows about this patient that's going to take a lower dose, or that that you in consultation with the doctor explain to the patient why the higher dose is important.
Thank you so much. Question 5, the formulation, sorry, let me move it up. The formulation manufacture of an injectable solution necessitates that option A, the product must not be manufactured on the same premises as the oral dosage form, and there were 6 responses. The product must be in a sterile solution dosage form, 137 responses. The clean areas used in the manufacturing procedure need not comply with standards of cleanliness, 12 responses, and the active ingredient must be optically active, 1 response.
Okay, I think this one is sort of a giveaway. So that's there are going to be more difficult questions, there are going to be easy questions, and I think this one is an easy one. So if we look at the majority of people said the product must be in a sterile solution dosage form. We all know that it's an injectable, so that already told us that it must be a sterile preparation. So we don't even have to look any further. We can just then say that B is our correct answer. We don't even have to read through the other options because that is definitely true.
Thank you.
And in this case, it doesn't say which one is the most appropriate. There is just one, and that is it.
Thank you. So the last question, question 6. A 24-week pregnant hospitalized patient develops an unknown infection. Which antibiotic is suitable as empiric treatment? 17 chose trimethoprim and sulfamethoxazole. 61 chose piperacillin tazobactam. 76 chose clindamycin. And 3 chose kanamycin.
Okay, so I think the correct answer would be B, piperacillin. So I see a lot of people opted for clindamycin as well. If you look at what clindamycin is restricted to the treatment of severe infections due to sensitivity. So based on the information that you have here, you wouldn't give clindamycin. Piperacillin would definitely be the first option. In the practical situation, in practice, you would, in this case, maybe phone the doctor and say to him that, or, well, in this case, the doctor would phone you and say what, and then you would discuss it. And based on what the sensitivity, et cetera, is, it might be clindamycin in the end. But based on what you have here, option B is definitely the correct answer.
Thank you very much. So we're just going to move back to our presentation. So we now are going to open up for questions, and there have been a few questions that have been posted in the meantime. So let's just go through these. Are these the only types of calculations that we will get, or are there other types of calculations? So that refers back to the first part of our presentation. So the types of calculations we have given, and Mrs. Khan read through a list of calculations. This is also provided in the intern tutor manual. Now, we are saying that the large majority of questions is going to come from this list. It is not only the examples that you have been provided in today's session, but we are saying that the types of calculations that you can expect are related to the competencies, related to the domains and competency standards, and that the large majority are going to come from these examples that we have given you in this list provided in the manual. Okay. The next question is, by having a second device in the exam, are you referring to cell phones or only devices I think you mean provided to us in the exam? So we're going to tackle this in the next part of the presentation. You are going to be writing the examination remotely, so you need to provide your own device. And yes, you may use your cell phone to access both the exam platform, or if you'd like to use it as a second device to use for references. Anna-Marie, can I just ask you to take the next question? The question is, I did not see the SAMF on the recommended references for general part of the exam. Is this not important to use?
Hello. Yes, it was on that slide. Maybe you can, it was on the slide on the left-hand top corner, the SAMF was there. Yeah, there on the left-hand top corner, it says references to use SAMF. I would think the SAMF is definitely a book that could be used. And important then, if the books are not here, this is just recommendations. So if there's anything else that you use in your pharmacy on a daily basis or on a weekly basis, then you can use it. So the books that we recommend are just books that's in everyday use, and the books that's normally found in the pharmacy, but you can use anything else. But the SAMF, I think, is really important.
Can I just ask you, just to clarify in terms of the addition of the SAMF and using current references?
The current edition of the SAMF is the 13th edition. That's a purple book. I know the 14th edition, up to about 2 weeks ago, it was not available yet. So for exam purposes, the 13th edition of the SAMF is really the one to use.
Okay.
Because remember when we set the exam, we were using the 13th. So if the 14th is out by exam time, you can use it. It will be an updated one, but the 13th one would be regarded as current.
I just want to add to that there is certain information that perhaps changes in that book since it was published. So, for example, we may have had the rescheduling of medicines, which has now the answer might be outdated in the 13th edition. So I think in terms of, I think you've got to look at the specific reference and or the question, and then trying to match the most applicable reference. And that just to note that some of the information, especially when it comes to the scheduling of medicine, might be outdated.
Thank you, Deanne. That's actually a very, very important point, yes. That remember, a book is printed and then it's an edition. That edition stands for until it is updated. So that is very, very important, especially with the daily drug use as well. The daily drug use is the latest we have, but it is actually quite an old reference book.
Thank you very much. So there have been a few questions, and I just want to refer back to it. The correct answer for question 2, please.
The correct answer for question 2 would be in option D. Contact the doctor if exposed to shingles or chickenpox.
Thank you so much. If we have to write the pre-registration examination and the actual examination in the same place, yes, so you don't have to write them in the same place, but this is a question that we're going to handle later on in the presentation, so we will be coming back to that. Okay, so we seem to have come to the end of the questions, and let's go back to our presentation. We're now going to have a look at the information regarding the remote exam setting, what you're going to need, your device, etc., etc. Okay, so let's have a look at when you will be writing the pre-registration examination. The pre-registration examination, we hold 3 exams per year, one in the first quarter of the year in about March, then the middle of the year exam is always in the month of July or the beginning of August. So this year it's the beginning of August, and then one towards the end of the year, which is going to be in October. Okay, so the dates have been provided. The pre-registration examination is going to be held on 5 and 6 August. This is a Friday and a Saturday. The next exam will be 25 and 26 October. Please note that this is a Tuesday and a Wednesday. Remember, right at the beginning, we spoke about this practice exam, and the practice exam is a mock exam in which you will have a full set of questions that you get to revise under exam conditions. So the practice exam is compulsory for everyone to write before they may write the actual exam. And the practice exam is going to be held on the 2nd of June, this is a Thursday, as well as on the 18th of August, which is a Thursday as well. You only need to write the practice exam once. So if you decide to write it in June, you don't have to write it in the month of August. However, there's nothing stopping you from writing it more than once, but it is compulsory that everyone attempts it once. Okay, so in terms of the examination, the most important thing is that I'm sure you've realized by now, we communicate with interns via SMS and email. So please make sure that we have your correct cell phone number and email address. We can only send it to one cell phone number and to one email address, so please make sure that you have updated your details on the secure site of the SAPC website, and that if this changes before the exam, you will let us know. The profile picture, so it's important that we need to verify who is writing the examination. So we verify this via the profile picture that is uploaded on your profile. And then during the examination, we take images and we verify that it is the correct person who is registered with the South African Pharmacy Council as an intern writing the exam. So please make sure we have your correct details, as you will be notified via email and SMSs when the bookings are open. Please only book for an exam when we have notified you via email and SMS. So there are no exams that are scheduled that haven't been that information has not been sent out to the candidates that are able to write that examination. So please don't try and book for an exam or pay to write an exam until we have notified you via email and SMSs that the booking is open. So for the exam that is going to be written in August and in October, the bookings will open 6 weeks before the exam. We then close the bookings 4 weeks before the exam. We do, however, allow late bookings, so that's from 4 weeks to 14 days before the exam. Late bookings, there is a fee that is applicable if you book late for the exam. We're going to talk about what criteria you need to meet in order to book for the exam later on in the presentation. But in case you don't meet those criteria, by 4 weeks before the exam, there is a last opportunity for you to book for the exam between a month and 14 days before the exam will be held. Late booking fee will be invoiced to interns. After you have written the exam, you will be asked to pay the late booking fee. Okay, so we've talked about this practice exam, and just to reiterate, the practice exam is written on a specific day. There are limited practice papers that are available for interns to use. You can get the sample 2019 practice paper from the website by clicking on pharmacist intern. Then the highlighted area over there is the pre-reg examinations, and you would then be able to go to the sample 2019 paper. You can also find the sample paper on the secure site. When you go to your dashboard, you click on pre-registration examination, and then the next 4 tabs that appear, you can click on the one that says practice exam. Please, however, note that that practice exam doesn't count as the practice exam that is compulsory to write. You are required to write the examination, the practice examination, and if you do not write the practice examination, you won't be able to write the actual examination. Okay, in terms of your profile picture, we need an image of your head and shoulders that is a color image taken in the last 6 months. And please make sure that when you're taking this image that you don't have anything that is covering your head, so no head coverings and nothing covering your face. We need to do this because we need to be able to verify you during the examination that it is you who is writing the exam. And if you do cover your head or your face for religious reasons, please would you contact the Office of the Registrar on the Pre-Reg Exam workshops at sapc.za.org, and we'll be able to advise you accordingly. But please make sure that you have changed and uploaded your profile picture. As mentioned, it is a color image taken in the last 6 months of your head and shoulders. If we do not have and we can't verify you during the examination, we will then remove you from the exam. So it is quite important. It is really important to us that we're able to verify that it is you writing the examination remotely. So please make sure that you have uploaded a picture and that during the exam you are using a device that has a camera. Okay, so just to let you know where you would log on. When you log into the website, you would then have on the left-hand side, you would have dashboard, CPD, manuals, my progress. However, you won't be able to update or change your details on that side. If you then go to the top right-hand corner of your screen and you press on the little down arrow that is in turquoise, you would then be able to upload your profile picture by selecting the file that you have available on your device. Okay, in terms of eligibility to write the examination, these were the criteria that were approved by council and that are applicable to this examination. The first examination, the first time that you will be allowed to write the exam is interns that are in their 6th month, which means that you must have completed 5 months. So for majority of interns that registered in the month of January, you would be in your 6th month in the month of June going into July. So you will be eligible to write the examination. You need to have submitted 6 CPDs and competent in 3 submissions. So this is submission of 6 CPDs, and submission means that you would have submitted them. They don't necessarily have to be marked, but out of the 6 that have been submitted, 3 of them must have been marked and you must be competent in 3. The other 3 do not need to have been assessed yet. You need to have completed the practice exam and your tutor must have submitted the first 3 progress reports. Remember that the progress reports are due at 12 months, 24 months, 36 months, and 12 weeks, 24 weeks, 36 weeks, and 45 weeks, not months. Okay, 9 months, the criteria changes slightly. For interns registered for 9 months or more, they then need to have submitted and be competent in 6 CPDs. You need to complete the practice exam and your tutor must have submitted 4 progress reports. You need to meet these criteria when you book for the examination. So in terms of, remember we said the bookings open 6 weeks. If you are booking 6 weeks before the exam, on that date of booking, you need to have met these criteria. It will not allow you to book until you meet these criteria. So the system, it will not allow you to make a booking for the exam unless these criteria are met. Please note that the entrance criteria will not change in 2022. So the entrance criteria will not be changed. The date of the exam will not be moved in 2022. So use this opportunity now to ensure that you are submitting your CPDs so that you will be eligible to write the exam in the month of August or October. So just a reminder about your CPDs. The CPD dates, these are the dates for submission and release of results that are available on the SAPC website. So there have been a number that have passed already. We are now sitting in the month of May, so you would have submitted your CPD entries last week. And if you submitted them on the 6th of May, you will receive feedback on the 30th of May. Then looking at our next date, if you still need to have your 3 CPDs that need to be competent, you would have to submit that by the 10th of June, because entries that are submitted on the 10th of June will be released on the 4th of July, and you will still have the opportunity to book for the exam if you are competent and then meet the criteria after the results are released on the 4th of July. If you wait until the 15th of July and you still need to be competent in some of those entries, you will not receive the results until the 8th of August. So please note that do not delay the submission of your CPDs so that you stand the best possible chance of writing the examination as soon as possible. I also want to just highlight that on the 6th of, the last submission date for 2022 is the 28th of October. You will receive your results in November. You will then only have the opportunity to submit on the 6th of, or the next submission date is the 6th of January, and those results will only be released on the 3rd of February. Important to note is that you will have an opportunity to engage with the CPD unit on the 7th and 8th of June, where you will be having your feedback session. Okay, so we've been discussing this remote examination, and what do we mean by the remote examination? The remote examination is that you get to decide where you will be writing the exam. And we suggest that you write it either at your place of residence or workplace. You may also choose to write it at another venue, such as a library, or perhaps you need to go to your parents' work environment, your parents' workplace because they have a more stable Wi-Fi connection. You would then choose the other option when booking. If you're unable to find a suitable place to write the exam, you do have the opportunity to write at the South African Pharmacy Council premises in Arcadia, and we will make this available to you for you to write the exam. You do, however, need to confirm a venue when booking for the exam. We do confirm during the exam where you are writing the exam, and you please need to enable the system to access your location when you log on to the exam. Okay, so now that you know that you'll be writing the examination remotely, we need to discuss the device that you are going to be using, what you will need during the exam, and most importantly, how do you communicate with the South African Pharmacy Council if you're experiencing any problems? Okay, so the remote examination here, it really is in your hands. So you need to make sure that the environment that you are using is quiet and suitable workspace with enough space for you to use your device as well as your reference material. We really do ask, and we know that it is a stressful event, but if anything happens, that you would keep calm and that you would communicate with your remote invigilator if you're experiencing any problems. And we will discuss this later. You can either contact the office using the WhatsApp number, and we also have a chat function in which you can contact the invigilator with any problems you may be having. Once again, remember that during the exam, it might be quite difficult to download the reference material. You know, your connection may be quite slow. So we really recommend that you use this time to prepare and to download all the references beforehand. Not that you can't download something during the exam, just that sometimes it would slow you down. Please make sure that you have the equipment with you. This would be a calculator, paper, pens, etc. So with regard to the device, we suggest, and these are suggested devices, that you use a laptop or a desktop with a functioning camera. Please note, though, that the exam site is mobile responsive. And what that means is that you can log on to the exam using your cell phone or a tablet. We do recommend, though, that you use a tablet or a desktop just because of the size of the screen, but you would still be able to use the same functionality and the questions would appear in the same, well, it is mobile responsive, so you will be able to use a smaller device if you need to. The most important thing is that the device must link to a camera. In terms of connectivity, you need a minimum of a 3G connection. And the browser that we suggest you use is Google Chrome. It will, however, work on Firefox and Microsoft Edge, but please make sure that for the practice exam, you are using Google Chrome. Now, the examination, on the day of the exam, we do send, not the day of the exam, but the week before the exam, normally the day before the exam, we send you the exam instructions. And this is going to tell you exactly where to find the exam. Now, you can access the exam via two methods. The one is via the public pages, where you can click on registered person. You then open up pharmacist intern. You would then move to the tab that is highlighted in the bottom image that says Pre-Reg examinations. And then you would go here where it says, please click here. You then click here to access the exam. However, you can also access the exam by logging onto your profile where you use your P number, your ID number, and your password. You would then, from the dashboard, go to the tab that says pre-registration examination. Then remember those four little blocks would appear, and you click on the one that says pre-registration examination. It would once again take you to the login page for the exam. We know that we are living in times where our electricity is unstable, so we need to make a plan regarding load shedding or loss in electricity. The first thing is that you need to keep calm. Please make sure that you are checking your load shedding schedule ahead of time, and we know that it is winter, so the likelihood of load shedding is quite high. Ensure that you are using a laptop that has been fully charged before the exam, and that if you're using a desktop, that you have an alternate, like an alternate energy supply that will be able to work in the event of load shedding or loss of electricity. Please also make sure that you've got an alternate Wi-Fi connection. So you need to consider that certain connections such as fiber would go down in the event that you have a loss of electricity. So then you need to consider what other device can I use? And what we would suggest is that you would then use your phone to hotspot your laptop, or you would be able to change devices. So you can actually change from using your laptop to logging in using your phone. So we really do suggest that you have got a backup Wi-Fi connection. If load shedding occurs during the exam, please don't worry. Everything is saved as you answer the questions. Okay, so what happens if you lose your connection? If you lose your connection, so you are logged out of the system, you don't need to worry because everything that you have answered up until that point is saved. Each time you answer a question, we record the time and the date that the question was answered. So you don't have to worry, everything is saved and only one question appears at a time, and as you press next, that is automatically saved on our side. If you need to log in again, you or use a second or use another device, you can then log on to the SAPC website and go through the same process of logging on. You will receive a new one-time password, and all the questions that were answered will be saved. The part that I just want to warn you is that as you log on with a new device, the questions are once again randomized and the questions are renumbered. So if perhaps you had a loss of electricity on question 10, when you log in again to the exam site, the next question that appears will not be numbered question 11. It is going to appear as question 1. However, those 10 questions that you have already answered, you will not be able to access those 10 questions as the website has recorded those answers already. So that's just a word of warning that if you see something renumbering, you don't have to panic. That is completely normal and that everything that you have answered is saved. Okay. So how are the days of the exam going to look? So the first day, so day 1 of the exam, which would be a Friday if you are writing in August, you would log on between 8 and 9. Now, logging on at 8, between 8 and 9, gives us the opportunity to assist you if you are not able. So, for example, perhaps you have forgotten your password to the SAPC website and you need to contact us. Maybe the OTP PIN has been delayed and you need to contact us to retrieve your OTP. Logging on between 8 and 9 ensures us that we can help you timelessly before we start the exam at 9 o'clock. At 9 o'clock, we start the exam for everyone at the same time, and we end the exam for everyone at the same time. So the exam will end at 11 o'clock. Okay, between 9 and 11, images are taken to verify. So we verify the image that we have on the SAPC website against the images that are taken by the exam platform. Remember that if we cannot verify your image during the examination, there is the possibility that you would be removed from the exam. Day 2 is much the same as day 1. Now you're a little bit more used to the exam platform, but again, we recommend that you log in between 8 and 9. At 9 o'clock again, we will start the exam. And what I ask you is that you do not click start the exam until 9 o'clock. If you press start the exam on the second day of the exam early, it's going to take you right to the end of the exam where it will ask you to complete the post-exam declaration and the examination questionnaire. You don't have to panic. Log off from the website and log on again. So no one has access to the exam questions until we start the exam at 9 o'clock. Okay, so on day 2, remember it's the 80 general questions that you're going to be answering, and the exam is going to end at 11:30. I just want to discuss that the practice exam takes place on one day. So the practice exam, everyone will log on between 8 and 9 on those Thursdays that we provided. So you would log on between 8 and 9, and then we would write the calculations from 9 until 11. We'll have a quick 30-minute break. When you come back at 11:30, we will then start the general section of the exam, and at 11:30, and we will be finished at 2 o'clock. Okay. We need to make sure that we would be writing the practice exam on one day, as we can't ask your employers for you to have 2 days off to write the practice exam. So therefore, we write both sections of the practice exam on the same day. Okay. So remember, we said that we take images throughout the exam, so we need to be able to verify that it is you. And sometimes when you have light behind you, then we cannot see your face in the image that is taken. So please make sure that you are sitting in front of either a wall, or if you are sitting in front of a window, that you can close the curtain so that we will be able to see that it is you writing the exam. So test the lighting beforehand. Take an image or a selfie of yourself and see that you would be able to see yourself, or use the camera function on your device. Please, once again, we are warning you that you need to ensure that your camera is on. And then secondly, please make sure that you have changed out of your pajamas, that you are wearing clothes and you are dressed appropriately. Remember that all the images that are taken during the exam form part of your permanent record. If the invigilator cannot see you, they will need to phone you or contact you via the chat function. So please make sure that you do respond, that you always have your cell phone next to you so that you can answer any calls that you might receive from the South African Pharmacy Council. Okay, so I wanted to show you what the live site would be. So let's just take a look at this. I'm going to stop it at specific intervals. So here we're just going to have a look at how you are going to log onto the website. So here I'm logging on from the public pages. I would go pharmacist intern, pre-registration examination, and I would click here to access the exam. Here I'm using my P number, my ID number, and my password. And this is to access the exam platform. These are the same details that you enter to access your secure page on the SAPC website. Please note that it takes a little bit of time to log me onto the exam site, so give it a bit of time. The next page asks for an OTP. And the OTP, what we often experience is that candidates press resend the OTP because it doesn't come through quick enough. Now, the OTP is going to be sent to both your cell phone number as well as your email. And here, this is actually real time in terms of how long it has taken for me to receive the OTP. So it takes about a minute. So don't press resend OTP. Wait for it, because as you see, I'm going to show you that, and here's an example of the email that I have received, and I copy the OTP, I go back to the website, and then I paste that OTP. I also would have received an email. This is an example of the declaration, and I just want to go through each of these statements because you are declaring that you are agreeing to the examination code of conduct. So the first thing that you're agreeing to is, I am writing the examination at the place stipulated in my booking confirmation. The second statement says, I am not sitting next to anyone or in close proximity to another candidate writing the exam. I will not receive any form of assistance from any person writing this examination. I will not communicate, verbal, electronic, or in person, with any candidate, pharmacist, tutor, or registered person during the exam. I will only use reference material permitted in the examination. You also agree that you will not assist anyone during the examination. You may not make any copy, or you may not share or discuss anything that has appeared within the examination with any person either during or after the exam. You also agree to inform the South African Pharmacy Council if you are aware that any candidate has contravened this code of conduct. So as you can see, I'm agreeing, and as I tick each of these, it is also recording this. Okay, just in terms of the last two, I just want to stop it here. The last two statements read, I will neither share, copy, nor discuss the examination with any other person during or after the exam. And the last one is that you would inform. You would then press the continue button, which would then take you to the next page. You cannot continue to the next page until you have agreed to that. So the next page contains information about the exam. It gives us the time of the exam, the pass rate, the number of questions, etc., etc. It will also list the examiners and moderators that have been working on this examination paper. And then lastly, at the bottom, it provides the examination instructions. So let's just take a moment to read through the exam instructions. Ensure that you are writing the correct section of the exam. You may only start the exam at 9 o'clock. And remember, I said that no one has access to the exam before 9 o'clock. So even if you press start the exam, start the exam, start the exam, you won't have access until the Office of the Registrar has started it for everyone at 9 o'clock. Once the exam starts, there's a timer that will be displayed on your screen. And every 30 minutes, there is a time-lapse reminder that will appear. You need to then click on those reminders to proceed with the examination. Okay. The exam will take, the system will take pictures at intervals. Please ensure that your camera is working and is correctly positioned to take pictures of you. All questions, please note, are worth 1 mark, and there is no negative marking for selecting an incorrect answer. Questions are randomized, so that means that question 1 that appears for me is not the same as question 1 that appears for you. There are 4 correct answers per question, and you can only select 1 correct answer per question. You would use the mouse to select the correct option. The selected option is treated as your answer for the question. The answers are automatically saved on the system. Once you have answered the question, you cannot return to the question. And if you do not answer a question, you may revisit the question at the end of the exam. Okay. So now, once I have been through this, I can then click on Start the Exam. So start the exam either at the top or the bottom. But remember that I can only start the exam once the invigilator has started the exam for everyone. Okay. So this is an example of how the questions are going to appear. So I just want to go through this. There firstly, so this is, for example, question 9. And we have a question stem, which is the question, followed by 4 options, A, B, C, and D. I would then use my mouse to select the correct option. So I can choose option A, B, C, and D. In the event that I don't know the answer to this question, I straight away can click on next question, and then I have the opportunity to revisit this question at the end of the exam. Okay, but let's have a look at some of the functionality of the system. So here, if I click on the References tab, and I just want to take you back by just a few seconds. Oh, okay, if I click on the References tab, there we go. Oh, I missed it again. There we go. So here, if I click on the References tab, so that tab above the question that says References, these are the reference materials that you have available to you from the SAPC website. Remember, you can also access the SAPC website as well as the SAPRA website or any other reference material online as well. But these are the reference materials that we have that are linked to the website. So here you have got an example. Well, you've got the GPP, you've got the GMP guideline, standard treatment guidelines, the National Drug Policy. What we do also have here that isn't available on our website is the Martindale. So these are the references that you can open up and use. You will have access to these during the practice exam, and what we suggest is that after the practice exam, you would then save these references if you don't want to open and download them during the exam. The Martindale is quite a large reference that takes a little bit of time to download, but this is how it will appear when I download the reference. So it will open up in another tab, and then I can scroll down and have a look at the reference provided. I can then close the references, and here is just an example of chatting with the invigilator. So if I click on the bubble that says chat with the invigilator, I can type in a message, I can send that to the invigilator then will read that message and respond. So just a few things, please make sure that when you type in your message, you do press the send button, because if you've just typed in a message without pressing send, we won't be able to see it on our side. Please just give a few moments for the invigilator to respond to your query. Okay, so that's just one thing. And then for this bubble to disappear, you would have to click on chat with the invigilator again. So over here, I'm just showing you that I've selected, for example, option B. I can at this point in time change my option from B to C or B to A, but as soon as I click next question, I can no longer access this question. So as soon as I've answered it, I can no longer have access to this question. Even if I were to press on the back arrow at the top here, I will not be able to see this question again. Okay. So that's just a few points. Remember, click on chat with the invigilator to remove that bubble. Okay. And then over here, I'm just showing that I'm clicking on next question, and then it will take me through to the next question. Okay. So just in terms of, these are the different pages that you are going to see when you log into the website. We have been through all of these. Just a reminder, please do not press resend the OTP. Give it a few moments before you press resend. Each of the questions appears on its own. You would then click on next question. It will take you to the next question. You will only be able to access unanswered questions at the end. What you haven't seen yet is the post-examination declaration, and you are agreeing to these two statements, which we will cover later. And then after that, please take the opportunity to complete our post-examination survey so that we can understand how you experience the online remote examination. We have been through this declaration. Please take the declaration seriously and make sure that you are reading through each of these statements, as by ticking on the statement, you are agreeing to the statement. The format of the questions, we have gone through this already. It's one question per page. We do have randomization of questions. It is a timed examination. Each question isn't timed. So we gave you a guide that, for example, the calculation questions is 3 minutes per question. However, you don't only have 3 minutes per question. You can take a minute to answer that question. You can take 5 minutes to answer that question. However, you will only have 2 hours to answer the calculation section and 2.5 hours to answer the general section of the exam. Please remember that you can only visit unanswered questions at the end of the exam. This is how a question will appear, a stem followed by 4 options. You would use your mouse to select the correct option. How do you submit the exam? Well, as mentioned earlier, each time you answer the question, we record that answer. So even if you lose electricity or you lose connection, you don't have to worry. All of your answers are saved. Right at the end of the exam, if you do not press the submit button, that's okay, because we have recorded each of your answers as you have proceeded through the exam. So please don't worry. Everything is recorded as you proceed. The post-examination declaration, remember you signed this at the beginning and you're confirming this at the end. And this is really important. I confirm that I have completed the examination without assistance from any person and adhere to the examination code of conduct. I understand that if I am found to have contravened the examination code of conduct, the SAPC will implement disciplinary action against me in terms of Chapter 5 of the Pharmacy Act. Okay, so there will be repercussions if you are found to have contravened the examination code of conduct. Once again, please make sure that you have not retained or shared any contents of the exam electronically, in printed form, written, or verbal means with any other person. When will you receive your examination results? So the examination results, after you write the exam is marked immediately, but it does take a while for the examination results to be released. And this is because we take the examination results and we remark all of the examination results to verify that those marks are correct. We then statistically analyze each of those questions, and the moderator writes a report. That report then is received by the pre-registration committee. So the results can only be released once the office of the registrar is happy with the moderator's report, and in consultation with the chairperson of the pre-registration committee, they will then release the results for the exam. So it's very important that this does take time, and it takes up to a month for us to release the results after the exam is written. You can go online to the SAPC website. You will then be able to retrieve your results, your examination results, on your dashboard. Okay, you may appeal against your examination results within a month after receiving your results, and you must please send your request in writing to council within 30 days after the release of results. We do not have an examination remark because, as I mentioned, all of the examination results so it's marked automatically by the system. We then export those results and we remark all of those to verify that the result that you receive is correct. So you aren't able to apply for a remark as we are 100% confident that your mark is correct. You may apply for a review of your examination, where you have the opportunity to see the question and your answer once again. But please note that this is not a remark. You cannot, during the review, request that your examination script is remarked. So this is not an opportunity at that point to query your results, but it is an opportunity for you to learn from the mistakes that you made in the examination and review the question so that you do not make the same mistakes again. What happens if you're unsuccessful in the exam? If you're unsuccessful in the examination, you may rewrite the examination at the next sitting. But please note that if you have only failed one section of the examination, you are required to write both sections of the examination. So if you wrote the exam in August and you failed the calculation section of the exam and passed the general section of the exam, in October, you will be required to write both the general and the calculation section of the examination. In terms of the entrance criteria, you need to have submitted and be competent in 6 CPD entries. You need to have completed the practice exam, which you would have done anyway for the first time that you wrote the exam. And your tutor must have submitted the relevant progress reports according to your date of registration. So please make sure that you do meet the entrance criteria if you need to rewrite the examination. So just to recap, in terms of your internship and how we evaluate you, there are really 4 components that contribute to the internship evaluation. The first one is the pre-registration examination. The second one is the CPD portfolio. The third part is progress reports. And the last part is 365 days of supervised practice. Please note that the 365 is a minimum and not a maximum, so your internship can be extended if you do not meet these criteria. So today we've been discussing the examination, the online exam. You are well versed in what is expected regarding your CPD entries. You need to submit and be competent in all 6 CPDs before you are deemed competent in your CPDs. Your progress reports, these differ according to your sector of registration. If you're in institutional and community, there are 7 progress reports. If you're in manufacturing, there are 9 progress reports plus the declaration of 400 hours. In academia, it's 3 progress reports plus the declaration of 400 hours, as well as the achievement of a master's qualification. Proof of competence is favorable progress reports from your tutor. Just a few notes in terms of your progress reports. So your tutor needs to submit these online. So please make sure that you are going to remind your tutors to submit your progress reports on time. Your progress reports aren't due on a specific date, but your tutor is able to go back and submit any progress reports that they haven't submitted yet, as well as they are. So if they can complete, and we do suggest that the progress reports are completed according to your days of practical training, but they can, for example, complete your next progress report. Perhaps instead of completing it at exactly 24 weeks, they would like to complete it at 23.5 weeks. There is nothing stopping them from completing in 1 or 2 days early either. Okay, so that it's just important that we receive those progress reports on time. The last part that I just want to go through here is that the academics, please note that you will not be released from communities, from internship until we have received achievement of your master's qualification. And achievement means that you have attained your master's degree. This therefore does not mean that you have submitted your master's thesis. Okay, so that's just important to note, that we do need proof that you have obtained your degree. So once you have met these criteria, so it's these 4 types of evaluations, progress report, CPDs, and exam, and you have completed 365 days, you will then be released from internship and you'll be able to commence community service. Really important that community service placement is done by the Department of Health through ICSP. We do registration of community service pharmacists, so there is a difference. So please contact and visit the ICSP website in terms of placement. We will be holding a workshop in the month of October for you to ask questions relating to your placement and registration. We will be joined on this day by the Department of Health, who will be able to answer any questions that you might have regarding placement, and we will be able to assist in answering any questions that you have relating to registration. So please make sure that you join us in October, and that you also look out for any notifications that we might be sending via email or SMS closer to the time. Okay, so I see that there are quite a few questions that we have. I note that Ms. Mokwena has joined us. Ms. Mokwena, I just want to confirm if you would like us to take questions or if you'd like to address the interns now.
You can take them.
Okay, great. Okay, so looking at the questions that we have, so there is a question, just to confirm, all questions will be multiple choice questions, or will they be longer form questions? So I'd like to confirm all 120 questions will be MCQs. Okay. There is a question. I registered with SAPC on the 16th day of February. Hence, I complete my 6 months on the 16th of August, just a week before the exam. Will I be eligible to write on 5 and 6 August? So it's difficult for me to answer specific questions according to date of registration. Please just have a look at the intern manual, and it will there discuss. Remember that you don't need to have completed 6 months. You need to be in your 6th month and have completed 5 months. But specific questions about date of registration and whether you'll be able to write the exam, please note that you can contact the Office of the Registrar for specific questions. Okay. There is a question, and I'm going to ask Anna Maria if she can take this question. The question is regarding the SAMF. So the SAMF 12th edition is not relevant anymore.
Okay, I won't say the 12th edition is not relevant anymore. It is just that with the updates, if something is not relevant, the information in the 12th edition is no longer relevant, then you might answer the question wrong. But I think the 12th edition are still pretty much relevant. It is just if something changed What I do remember from the 12th edition is on spironolactone, there was nothing in as a diuretic. That information was not in the 12th edition, where it has been updated in the 13th. So it's little things. So if you can't get hold of the 13th edition, the 12th edition should be fine.
Thank you so much. The next question, is it possible to get past papers for practice? So the only past papers that we have available are those past papers that are available on the website as well as the secure site of the SAPC website. So there are very few past papers that are distributed by the South African Pharmacy Council. So what we suggest is that you discuss with previous with your tutor, etc., that you would ask what types of questions may appear, that you are using the reference books that we have provided as suggested reference material to practice those calculation questions. So it is perhaps difficult for you to get past papers, but what we do suggest is that you are going to become more familiar with the contents and the types of reference material that we have suggested. We also provide the practice examination for this purpose so that you can have the opportunity to see what types of questions you are going to expect. So the next question is regarding the profile picture. Are glasses fine in the profile picture? Yes, you may wear glasses in your profile picture as long as the glasses we can see your eyes. So please no sunglasses in the profile picture, but we just need to make sure that we can recognize you from your profile picture. For academic interns, is it necessary to complete the 400 hours of community pharmacy before being eligible to write the exam, since one of the progress reports has to do with 400 hours? So specifically for academic interns, you do not need to meet the requirements for the progress reports because we know that the 400 hours sometimes is not completed yet, and you would like to write the examination in the meantime. So please note that for academic interns, the progress report criteria does not apply. The next question is, to write the practice exam on the 2nd of June, how would it be possible for our tutor to submit 3 progress reports if one progress report is submitted every 12 weeks? Okay, the practice exam on the 2nd of June, there are no criteria that apply when writing this practice exam. When you write any of the practice exams, there are no criteria that apply. The criteria apply to the exam that is written in August and October. So everyone has the opportunity, regardless of when they registered, to write the practice exam on the 2nd of June. Okay, the next question. Good day. I just want to make sure, will it be a problem if we use one device to look up information on an app or references when writing the exam, or is another device preferred? So again, this comes down to your approach to the examination. How you plan to use your references is up to you. What we are saying is that you may use a second device to access reference material. Whether you use that or not is up to you, and it depends on your strategy that you are going to use during the examination. Please may you clarify what requirements are for academic interns who are not able to write in their first and second years of masters. Okay, so please note that the requirements for academic interns is that you have submitted your progress reports. So that would be, so if you are in your first and second year of your master's degree, that would mean that you would have to submit and be competent in 6 CPDs, okay? And you also need to have met the practice examination. So you need to have written the practice exam. There are no progress reports that you have to submit. So in terms of the academic interns, it is the CPD requirements, and the CPD requirements are according to your date of registration as well as the practice exam. Will the exam be on a specific time? Yes, the exams are at a specific time. The examination, the calculation section of the examination will start at 9 o'clock and end at 11 o'clock. The next day, the general section of the examination will start at 9 o'clock and it will end at 11:30. If you're late for the exam, no additional time will be provided. For the practice examination, the exam will start at 9 o'clock and it will end at 2 o'clock. No additional time will be provided for the practice examination, so specific times do apply. The next question, just to confirm, so that means that if one wishes to write the pre-reg examination on the 25th and 26th October, the latest date to submit your CPDs and be competent would be the 26th of August. Okay, so I just want to go back to that date at the list of dates that I gave you regarding the CPD. So just give me one moment. Okay, so if you're writing the examination in August, you have 2 more dates to submit your CPDs, the 10th of June 2022 and the 15th of July 2022. If you submit on the 10th of June, you will receive your results on the 4th of July. If you submit on the 15th of July, you will only receive your results after the examination is written on the 8th of August. So remember that if you need to be competent in CPDs, please make sure that you submit these entries by the 10th of June. If you need to just submit entries, you have up until the date that you book for the exam to submit your CPDs. Those that submit on the 15th of July, if you still need to be competent in 3 CPDs to write the exam, you will need to submit by the 10th of June. If you submit by the 15th of July, this will be too late. If you need to be competent in CPDs, you need to submit, and you are writing the October exam, you need to submit these by the 26th of August, and your results will be released on the 23rd of September. And then you will be allowed to write the examination on 25. If you meet the criteria, you will be eligible to write the examination on 25/26. So yes, you are correct. If the 26th of August 2022 applies for those that still need to have their CPDs assessed and the marks released so that you can write the exam in October. Okay, there's a question from YouTube. From YouTube. A selfie picture, is a selfie picture appropriate? Yes, you can take a selfie, but remember, I just need to make sure that the picture is clear, that the picture is of your head and shoulders, and that it is a color picture. And please just look around you, especially the background. If the background is too busy, sometimes it is difficult for us to see you in the selfie picture, but a selfie is absolutely okay. You do not need to have a professional photo taken. A selfie will be absolutely fine. Regarding criteria for the exam, if an intern has started internship in September last year and is competent only in 5 CPDs, would the intern still be able to write the exam in August? Okay. So if the intern started the internship in September, that means by the time the examination is written in August, they are going to be in their 9th month of internship, and they need to have submitted and be competent in 6 CPDs. If their last CPD has not, so if they're not competent in that final 6 CPD, they won't be able to write in August. Okay. There was another question. So remember that, and so the question is due to internship ending in September. So in terms of the criteria that we said, it is for you to be progressed as an intern, you need to have completed a certain number of practical training days, and this is a minimum of 365 practical training days. So even if your internship, you no longer have an intern position, you can still write the examination. So your CPDs, you need to be connected to your tutor in order for your tutor to verify your CPDs and submit them online. However, if you are competent in all 6 CPDs, your tutor has submitted all of your progress reports, and the only part that is outstanding is your examination. You are allowed to still write the examination even if your contract has been terminated with your employer. It does become more tricky when it is CPDs though, because CPDs you need to be linked to your tutor. If you have any questions though, please send us a question on Pre-Reg Exam Workshop and we can discuss your situation. Okay. Is there extra time if you experience connectivity problems? No, there isn't extra time that is given if you experience connectivity problems. We do need you to ensure that you have got a second device as well as a backup internet connection. So please make sure that you have those, because the connectivity, the time, the exam is started and ended centrally for everyone writing the examination. Is the day of exam automatically apply as leave to all of us, or do we have to apply for leave from our days? This is dependent on your employer, so please discuss this with your employer, whether you would have to apply for leave or not. Okay, what if there's load shedding and I lose internet connection during the exam? So the first thing, please make sure that you have checked your load shedding schedule and that you have made adequate arrangements. If you are expecting load shedding on that day, you may contact the office of the registrar and make arrangements to change your location. If you are going to write at your place of residence and you know that you will be experiencing load shedding, or there's a high likelihood of experiencing load shedding, please make sure that your device is sufficiently charged and that you will still have an internet connection that will work. Okay, remember that you do have the opportunity to use your mobile device, such as your cell phone or your tablet, to take the exam. So please make sure that you have made these arrangements before the examination. Okay. The tutor's third progress report, 36 weeks, is after the Pre-Reg exam. I started my internship on the 5th of January. Does that mean I won't qualify? So please just go back and have a look at the progress reports. It is the 24-week progress reports that are due in order for you to write. There are 2 progress reports, I think, at 12 weeks that need to be submitted. Therefore, it would qualify and add up to the correct amount. So please go back and have a look at the progress reports. Within the manual, we do stipulate exactly which progress reports need to be submitted, and that if you have started on the 5th of January, you should be eligible provided you meet the CPD criteria to write in August. Should you be competent in the practice exam also? No, you do not need to pass the practice exam. We do, however, request that you take this practice exam seriously and that you are looking at the types of reference materials that you are going to be using. You look at your exam and where you're going to be writing the exam, and that you don't simply proceed through the exam and click on the answers and finish the exam, but you take the practice exam as an opportunity to experience the pre-registration examination. But if you are not competent in the practice exam, you, however, may still write the pre-registration exam. Also, if you're not competent at the practice exam, please take the opportunity to rewrite it if you wish to rewrite it again at the next sitting of the practice exam. Remember that you can rewrite the practice exam, however, you need to only do it once. It is compulsory to participate in it once. Are we allowed to use electronic documents on our devices to answer the questions since the exam is open book? Yes, you may use electronic documents to answer questions. You may also use a second device for your electronic documents. To clarify, the software for the exam will not penalize us for changing tabs from the exam to the next tab where the reference is located. Yes, you may change tabs to access references. that is absolutely fine. The software does allow you to change tabs. Do we have to register for the practice exam? Yes, you do need to register for the practice exam. You will not have access to any of the examinations if you do not register for the exam. We will be sending out notification via SMS and email when the bookings for the practice examination open. As an academic intern, will it be fine to write the practice exam this year and the examination next year? Or should we write the practice exam and the actual exam in the same year? It doesn't matter whether you write the practice exam this year and the actual exam next year. You may choose to rewrite the practice exam again next year. If you are writing the actual exam next year, it is up to you. The requirements are that you write one practice exam before the actual exam. There's no time stipulation between writing the practice exam and the actual exam. To write the pre-registration exam on 5 and 6 August, how would it be possible for our tutor to submit 3 progress reports if the 3rd progress report is submitted in September? Okay, so please refer to the intern tutor manual as it stipulates exactly which of the progress reports are required. Remember that I'm not asking for the progress reports for the 36-week progress reports. It is stipulated within the manual because for the one time period, there are 2 progress reports that are required. Okay, so you don't have to worry. You will be able to write if you registered as an intern in January. The progress reports that are required are possible within this time period. So please don't worry. Will we be writing the same exam whether we are working in manufacturing, hospital, or retail? Yes, you are writing the same examination. Everyone, regardless of their sector of registration, writes the same examination, whether you are academic, community, institutional, or manufacturing. I started my internship on the 5th of January. Do I need to be competent in all 6 CPDs to write the exam in August? No. Those that registered in January for the August exam would need to have submitted 6 CPDs and be competent in 3. When do we get the results for the first practice exam? The results for the practice exam will be released within a few days of the practice exam, but please just do give us a little bit of time to release these results, as I still do need to check these results and back up the results accordingly. So you won't receive it on the same day, but within a week of writing the exam, you should receive the results for the practice exam. In addition of comments on progress reports as interns, in addition of the comments on our progress reports as interns compulsory, and should we immediately or later after the submission of progress reports? I'm sorry, Anonymous, I don't understand your question, so you are welcome to just qualify in terms of, I think what you might be asking is, do you need to add comments, or do you need to comment on your progress report? And no, it is not compulsory for you to comment on your progress report. Is it compulsory to pass the practice exam? No, it's not compulsory to pass the practice exam. It is compulsory to do the practice exam. However, if you would like to write the practice exam a second time, you are also more than welcome to write the practice exam again. Okay, so thank you so much for your questions, and I just want to at this point hand over to the COO, Ms. Mokoena, who has joined us. So over to you, Mojo. Thank you so much for joining us today.
So much. I need my appreciation and thanks to the examiner and moderator, Anna Marie and Razia. I want to wish you well. I know this is the last workshop for these exams. So which means from now we need to now get busy. I saw that June is going to be very busy for everyone because of the CPD and the practice paper. It gives us July to really fully prepare for the August exam. But I must say that I'm a little bit worried now. I said to listen to the questions. Majority of what we are asking are in the intern manual because I was part of the development of that document. What we always do, based on your questions, we go back and update the manual for the next set of interns, and the same questions get asked. Safe to say we still have time. So it's 11:45. I'm not going to talk too much because you seem to have a homework of going to read that intern manual. Most of the questions and the details that you are asking, the answers are there. And I would like to take this opportunity to wish you well. Don't panic. It's an exam that has been written for many, many years. We have seen a lot of interns doing extremely well on this exam. It gives you an opportunity to look at how much you have learned in the practice space so that next year when you start with your CSP, you would be able to work independently. You would also be able to assist some of the interns that are coming. Don't be shy to ask questions to the previous interns. There's nothing called a stupid question. It will just help you. You might even be helping them by asking that question because if they don't know it, it means there is a gap there of learning. So go out there and make pharmacy proud. With those few words, thank you, and thank you to the office, the CSR team that are always there for us, weekends, night. Thank you so, so much. And we will meet again when we're discussing CPD. But please go through the manual so that when you ask us questions, you ask us questions that are not in the manual so that we can upgrade the manual for the team that is coming. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Mokoena. And I just want to, before you leave us, interns, if you could please just take the opportunity to complete the survey. It is compulsory for interns because this counts as your attendance register. For any tutors, pharmacists, or responsible pharmacists, please use the other link that is provided. So please would you just use these links to complete the survey. And once again, thank you very, very much to everyone for assisting this morning, and thank you to the interns for attending. Have a wonderful weekend.